chosen ones. Thus is not a suggestion, and it is not a metaphor dressed up to sound spiritual. This is an instruction that carries weight, the kind of weight that presses on your chest when you know a moment has arrived and silence is no longer optional. Because there are seasons when faith is loud and seasons when faith is quiet. And this is one of those moments when heaven is not asking you to speak, explain, defend, announce, clarify, justify, correct, or prove anything at all, because God has already seen what you have survived. He has already heard the prayers you whispered when nobody else was listening, and he has already recorded the injustice, the delays, the betrayals, the misunderstandings, and the private victories that never made it into the conversation. So now the instruction is simple and unsettling at the same time. Shut your mouth completely in the next 72 hours. Not because you are weak, but because you are powerful, and power does not need to announce itself before it moves. You have spoken enough in past seasons. You have tried to explain yourself to people who were committed to misunderstanding you. You have tried to defend your intentions to those who never intended to be fair. You have tried to correct narratives that were already written by insecure minds. And every time you opened your mouth, something drained out of you your peace, your clarity, your authority, because words are not always weapons and silence is not always surrender. Sometimes silence is strategy. Sometimes silence is obedience. And sometimes silence is how God clears the stage so he can speak without interruption for the next 72 hours. Heaven is asking you to stop reacting, stop responding, stop volunteering explanation, stop telling your side of the story, stop announcing what you are about to do, stop warning people of what they are about to lose, because what is coming does not need your commentary. It needs your restraint. It needs your discipline. It needs your trust, and that is uncomfortable for you because you have been trained by pain to speak fast, to correct fast, to defend fast, to prove fast. But God is retraining you now, not to be silent forever, but to be silent on purpose. There is a difference between being quiet because you are afraid and being quiet because you are aligned. And this instruction is not rooted in fear. It is rooted in timing, because there are conversations happening right now that you are not invited into meeting, happening in the spiritual realm that do not require your voice, only your obedience, only your stillness, only your willingness to let God handle what you have been trying to manage with words. Because every time you speak prematurely, you expose things that were supposed to be protected. You alert people who were never meant to be informed. You leak details that were meant to stay hidden until the right moment. You do not realize how much has been delayed simply because you talk too soon, not out of pride, but out of nervousness, out of excitement, out of the need to feel seen, out of the habit of over-explaining, but this is a different hour now. And God is saying, if you can trust me with your silence, I will trust you with visibility. If you can hold your tongue, I will move your life forward in ways words could never accomplish. Because what I am about to do does not need agreement from people, it needs alignment from you. For the next 72 hours, your silence will feel strange because you are used to filling the gaps, filling the awkward moments, filling the tension, filling the uncertainty with words. But silence will expose how much you rely on talking to regulate your emotions, and that is part of the instruction, because God is not just changing your circumstances, he is changing your reflexes. He is teaching you how to be still without feeling invisible, how to be quiet without feeling erased, how to wait without feeling powerless, because chosen ones are not chosen because they speak the loudest, they are chosen because they listen the closest. There are things unfolding right now that your mouth could interfere with, doors that are opening quietly, shifts that are happening subtly, reversals that are being arranged discreetly. And if you speak, you will disrupt the process, not because God is fragile, but because timing is precise. You are being invited to participate in that precision by withholding your words, because silence sharpens discernment. Silence strengthens intuition. Silence allows you to hear what you have been missing while you were busy explaining yourself. You have been misunderstood. And yes, that hurts, but correction is not your assignment right now. Obedience is. And this is where trust becomes real, because anyone can trust God when they are allowed to speak. But trusting God when you are instructed to be silent requires maturity. It requires confidence that God does not need your help to defend you, that he does not need your voice to validate your calling, that he does not need your explanations to justify his choice, because if he chose you, he already factored in the opposition, the gossip, the misinterpretations, the delays, and the lonely stretches where you would feel unseen. For 72 hours, let people think what they want. Let conversations move without your input. Let messages go unanswered unless absolutely necessary. Let comments sit without correction. Let assumptions remain unchallenged. Because God is not asking you to agree with lies, he is asking you not to wrestle with them. Because wrestling keeps you entangled, and silence releases you from battles you were never meant to fight, battles that drain your energy and distract your focus from what actually matters. This silence is not passive, it is active, it is intentional, it is loaded. It is the kind of silence that stores power, the kind of silence that sharpens impact, the kind of silence that makes your next move undeniable. Because when you stop talking, People start watching. When you stop explaining, outcomes start speaking. When you stop reacting, authority settles. And that is what God is doing. He is allowing your life to become the message instead of your mouth. You have been in a season where you felt like if you did not speak up, you would be overlooked. But this instruction flips that fear on its head, because God is saying your silence will not make you invisible. It will make you untouchable. It will confuse those who were waiting for a reaction. It will unsettle those who were expecting you to defend yourself. It will expose who was feeding on your emotional responses, because when you go quiet, the noise reveals itself. Do not underestimate how spiritual this instruction is, because words carry energy. And right now, your energy is needed elsewhere. It is needed for clarity, for preparation, for inner alignment, for rest, for recalibration. Because something is shifting and you see it, not afford to be scattered. And talking scatters you when it is not aligned with purpose, because every unnecessary conversation pulls you out of position just enough to slow down. Momentum. For the next 72 hours, pay attention to what rises up in you when you do not speak. Notice the urge to correct, the itch to explain, the impulse to react, because the impulses reveal where healing is still happening, where trust is still being formed, where ego is still being refined. And this is not condemnation. This is awareness, because chosen ones are not perfect. They're processed. And silence is part of that process. You are not being punished with silence. You are being protected by it, protected from saying something that cannot be taken back, protected from revealing something too soon, protected from engaging with people who do not deserve access to your thoughts, because access is earned. And silence is how God limits access without you having to draw lines or make announcements or create conflict. This is also about humility, not the kind that shrinks you, but the kind that anchors you, because humility knows when to speak and when to be still. Humility does not need to be right in every conversation. Humility trusts that truth does not expire just because it was not immediately defended. Humility knows that God is capable of correcting narratives without your participation. You may feel isolated during these 72 hours, because silence can feel lonely when you are used to connection through conversation. But this is an invitation into deeper connection, not with people, but with God. Because when you stop talking outwardly, you start hearing inwardly. And there are instructions, confirmations, warnings, and insights waiting for you in the quiet that you cannot access while your mouth is busy. Something is being rerouted in your favor. Something is being removed without your involvement. Something is being aligned behind the scenes. And your silence is not slowing it down. It is speeding it up, because obedience accelerates what effort cannot, and restraint accomplishes what explanation never will. Do not announce this silence. Do not tell people you are being quiet. Do not spiritualize it publicly, because this instruction loses power when it is broadcasted. It is meant to be lived, not posted. Practiced, not performed, because the reward of silence is not applause. It is movement, real movement, unseen movement, irreversible movement. You are not missing opportunities by being quiet. You are avoiding distractions. You are not losing relevance. You are gaining depth. You are not surrendering ground. You are allowing God to go ahead of you, because sometimes the most obedient thing you can do is step back and let God step in fully, without your commentary, without your corrections, without your interruptions. As these hours pass, you will notice a shift in your internal temperature, a calm settling in, a steadiness replacing urgency, a confidence replacing the need to convince. And that is how you know the instruction is working. Because peace is the byproduct of obedience, not explanation. Hold this. Silence like a seed. Not like a secret you are anxious to reveal, but like a seed you trust with. Break open at the right time, because when it does, it will not need defending. It will not need clarifying. It will not need persuading. It will simply be evident. And those who doubted will not need an explanation. They will need adjustment. Stay quiet when you want to speak. Stay still when you want to react. Stay grounded when you want to rush. Because these 72 hours are not about deprivation. They are about preparation, about positioning you for what comes next, about aligning you with a level of authority that does not argue, does not chase, does not beg to be understood, but moves with certainty. And when the time comes to speak again, your words will carry weight, not because you practice silence, but because silence practiced you, refined you, disciplined you, and taught you how to let God be loud on your behalf. Because right now he is saying, stay with me in the quiet, stay with me in the restraint, stay with me in the stillness. Because what is about to unfold will make sense why I asked you to be silent, why I asked you to trust without talking, why I asked you to let go of the need to be heard, because in just a little while, without you forcing anything, without you explaining anything, without you correcting anything, the shift will speak so clearly that even those who ignored your voice before will have no choice but to notice when the atmosphere changes, and they begin to realize that something moved while you were quiet, and that movement is not slowing down now, and it is not asking for permission, and it is not waiting for approval, because what God is doing next is already in motion, and you are being carried into it as long as you remain still. Enough to let it happen, and quiet enough to hear the next instruction that is forming even. Now, as the silence deepens and the weight of it settles, and you feel that pull to say something, but you choose not to, because this is the moment where obedience locks in the outcome, and the outcome is closer than you think, and the stillness is thicker now, and your restraint is being noticed. In realms you cannot see, and the timing is tightening, and the alignment is sharpening and all. That is required from you right now is to stay right here without speaking, even as the ears rise. Again and again, and you realize the silence is not empty, it is full, and something is about to break open, as long as you do not interrupt it by trying to explain what has already been decided, and what is already moving toward you with precision and purpose and power beyond words. And in this space where nothing is being said out loud, something heavy is being settled, because silence is not empty. It is occupied by intention, and right now intention is being sharpened inside you. You may not feel dramatic changes on the surface, but beneath that calm exterior, layers are being rearranged, priorities are being reordered, and attachment that once had a grip on you are quietly loosening, because when you stop speaking, you stop feeding certain patterns, and what is not fed eventually loses its strength. You are discovering how many of your words were actually reactions and not revelations. How many conversations were fueled by emotion instead of wisdom, and how often you were speaking to relieve discomfort rather than to release truth. And this realization is not meant to shame you, it is meant to free you, because awareness is the doorway to mastery, and mastery is where chosen ones are being positioned now. As the hours stretch on, you might notice how people respond to your quiet. Some will grow uneasy, some will try harder to provoke a response, some will attempt to pull you back into old dynamics with subtle bait, casual comments, indirect questions, or manufactured urgency. But do not take the bait, because the fact that your silence is disrupting their expectation is confirmation that it is working, because anything that relied on your reaction to survive will panic when that reaction disappears. There is a sacred boundary forming around you right now, one you did not have to announce, enforce, or explain, and that boundary is your restraint, because silence creates distance without hostility, protection without confrontation, and clarity without chaos. And this is how God teaches you to move differently. Not by hardening your heart, but by strengthening your discernment. You are learning that not every thought needs to be shared, not every feeling needs to be voiced, not every insight needs to be broadcasted, because some things lose potency when they are exposed too early. Some instructions are meant to be incubated before they are executed, because timing is as important as obedience, and silence protects timing. This period is also revealing who truly listens to you and who only responds to you, because when you are quiet, the ones who value you will still hold space for you, while those who only valued your output, your explanations, your emotional labor, will drift or become agitated. And this is not loss. It is sorting. It is refinement. It is alignment, because chosen ones are not meant to be accessible to everyone. You might feel moments of discomfort rising, moments where old fears whisper that you are being forgotten, overlooked, replaced. But those whispers are echoes of old seasons, not prophecies of the future, because God does not forget the ones he is actively shaping, and shaping often happens in silence, in obscurity, in the quiet, where applause cannot reach and opinions cannot interfere. As you remain quiet, you are also conserving energy that was once spent managing perception, navigating misunderstandings, and maintaining narratives, and that energy is now being redirected toward vision, toward preparation, toward inner strength, because what is coming will require stamina, not explanations, endurance, not arguments, and composure, not commentary. Notice how your mind begins to slow down when your mouth does, how clarity emerges. When noise is removed, how intuition sharpens when external input is minimized, because silence clears the stack. And in that clarity, you begin to see things you missed before, patterns you tolerated, compromises you normalized, and distractions that masqueraded as obligations. This silence is also breaking an old agreement you made with urgency. The belief that everything must be addressed immediately, that every message demands a response, that every misunderstanding requires correction. But urgency is not always wisdom, and speed is not always strength in God. Is teaching you how to move at a pace that aligns with purpose, not pressure. You are being retrained to trust outcomes more than conversations, results more than reactions, movement more than noise. Because when God moves, he does not always announce it. He often does it quietly, decisively, and completely, and by the time people realize what has shifted, it is already done. There are things being dismantled right now that you could not dismantle with words, habits that were reinforced through talking, cycles that were sustained through engagement and silence. Is cutting the supply line, because without your participation, certain dynamics I see cannot continue, and what cannot continue will eventually collapse. This is why. The instruction is specific, not vague, not indefinite, but measured, because God knows exactly how long it takes for certain patterns to lose momentum, how long it takes for clarity to surface, how long it takes for you to feel the difference between speaking out of impulse and speaking out of alignment. And these hours are calibrated, not random. You may also notice a deeper awareness of your surroundings, the tone of rooms, the energy of conversations, the subtle shifts in people's behavior, because silence heightens perception. And perception is a form of wisdom. And wisdom is what distinguishes chosen ones, not charisma, not volume, not visibility, but discernment. This season is teaching you that power does not rush to be understood. Power waits to be recognized. And recognition that comes from results is more stable than recognition that comes from explanation, because explanations can be dismissed, but outcomes must be acknowledged. As you continue to hold your tongue, you are also practicing self-trust, trusting that you do not need to justify your every move. Trusting that your intentions do not require constant clarification. Trusting that God sees you even when others misinterpret you. And this trust is built an inner confidence that cannot be shaken by opinions. You are beginning to feel the weight of your words returning to you. Not spilled out carelessly, not diluted through, overused but stored, refined, concentrated, so that when you do speak again, your words will land differently, not because they are louder, but because they are truer, cleaner, and more aligned. This silence is also preparing you to receive instruction, because it is difficult to hear guidance when you're always talking, always processing externally, always narrating your journey. But guidance often comes quietly, subtly, through impressions, nudges, and inner knowing. And these are easily drowned out by constant speech. You might sense a growing separation from old versions of yourself, the version that needed to be understood to feel validated, the version that equated visibility with value, the version that feared silence because it felt like disappearance. But you are not disappearing. You are consolidating. You are becoming more solid, more grounded, more anchored. As the hours continue, you may feel moments of temptation to break the silence for comfort, to seek reassurance, to vent frustration, to share excitement. But restraint in these moments is not repression. It is discipline. And discipline is what turns potential into authority. You are learning that not everyone deserves immediate access to your inner world. And not every emotion needs an audience. Because privacy is not secrecy, it is stewardship. And God is teaching you how to steward your voice, your energy, and your presence wisely. This period of quiet is also aligning you with patience, a patience that it's not passive, but alert, not resigned, but expectant, because patience rooted in trust does not feel like waiting. It feels like readiness, like standing in position, knowing that movement is inevitable. You may begin to notice that situations you once felt compelled to comment on no longer pull at you the same way, that certain provocations lose their sting, that certain opinions lose their power. And this is growth, not indifference, maturity, not apathy, because when you are aligned, you do not need to react to everything that moves. There is also a deepening, respect forming around you, even if it is not immediately verbalized, because people sense when someone is no longer easily pulled, easily provoked, easily accessible, in that sense, creates a quiet authority that cannot be manufactured. As you remain silent, you are also making space for God to speak on your behalf in ways you could not orchestrate, through circumstance, through timing, through outcomes that answer questions you never addressed, because divine advocacy is far more effective than self-defense. This instruction is also protecting you from self-sabotage, from saying something born out of temporary emotion that could have long-term consequences, from revealing plans before they are ready, from engaging in conversations that drain momentum, because silence acts as a filter, preventing unnecessary exposure. You are becoming more intentional, more selective, more aware of the cost of words, and this awareness will serve you long after this specific window has passed, because once you learn the power of silence, you do not return to careless speech. As the stillness deepens, you might feel a subtle strengthening inside, a steadiness that does not rely on external validation, a calm that does not depend on circumstances, and this is alignment settling in, the kind that allows you to move forward without needing permission. This quiet is also revealing how much you already know, how much clarity you already have, and how often you were seeking confirmation externally instead of trusting the guidance already placed within you. And as you stop speaking, you start listening to yourself differently. You are not falling behind during the silence. You are catching up with yourself, reconnecting with your intuition, your values, your sense of direction. Because noise often disconnects you from your inner compass, and quiet restores that connection. There is a recalibration happening where urgency is being replaced with intention, reaction with response, and explanation with embodiment. Because what you are becoming does not need to be announced, it needs to be lived. As the final stretch of this quiet approaches, you may feel a growing anticipation, not anxiety, but readiness, as if something is lining up just beyond your awareness. And that sense is not imagination. It is alignment, the feeling that comes with. You are in step with timing. Remain here. Remain steady. Remain restrained. Because every moment you choose not to speak, when you could have, is reinforcing a new pattern, a new level of self-control, a new standard of engagement. And this standard will define how you move in the next season. This silence is not isolating you from the world. It is positioning you within it differently. Not on the edge trying to be heard, but at the center, grounded, composed, and prepared. Because when the time comes for movement, it will be decisive. You are learning to let moments pass without commentary, to let emotions settle without expression, to let clarity emerge without force. And this skill will protect you in ways you cannot yet see. Stay here, stay quiet, stay attentive, because even now something is shifting internally. Something is locking into place. Something is becoming irreversible, and that quiet confidence you feel is not accidental. It is the result of obedience meeting alignment, and alignment always precedes movement. And as the silence continues to stretch and deepen, you may notice that what once felt like restraint now feels like strength. What once felt like withholding now feels like control. And what once felt uncomfortable now feels necessary, because you are no longer speaking to fill space. You are allowing space to shape you. And in that space, something is settling, something is forming, something is preparing to move forward without noise, without announcement, without hesitation, carrying you with it as long as you remain still in. To stay aligned and quiet enough to remain receptive to what is unfolding just beneath the surface, even now as the stillness continues to hold and the momentum continues to build, quietly without needing words to sustain it. And in this extended quiet, something subtle but unmistakable begins to happen. Your relationship with time itself starts to change minute. No longer feel like enemies that need to be filled with noise. Ours no longer feel like empty spaces that must be justified with conversation. Instead, time becomes an ally, a container where clarity settles and direction sharpens. Because when you are not constantly speaking, you are no longer racing against the clock. You are moving with it. You start to realize how often words were used as a form of control, an attempt to steer outcomes, manage perceptions, or soften uncertainty. And in releasing that habit, you discover a deeper form of influence, one that does not need to persuade, but simply aligns and allows. Because influence rooted in presence is far more stable than influence rooted in explanation. This silence is also revealing how much noise you once tolerated out of politeness, obligation, or habit, conversations that drained you, interaction that required you to shrink or perform. And now that you are quiet, you can feel the difference. Immediately, the relief of not having to engage, the freedom of not having to respond, and this relief is teaching you what alignment feels like in your body as you move through these hours. You may notice that your emotional reactions are slower, not suppressed, but tempered, like waves that rise but do not crash. And this is emotional maturity, taking root. The ability to feel without being ruled by feeling, to observe without immediately responding. And this ability will become one of your greatest strengths. You are also learning the difference between being accessible and being available, because accessibility often comes at the cost of self-respect, while availability is intentional and selective, and silence is teaching you how to choose when and where your presence is offered, rather than scattering it everywhere. There is also a purification happening in your inner dialogue, because when external speech decreases, internal noise often rises at first. Old doubts, unresolved questions, lingering fear. But as you remain quiet, those voices begin to sort themselves out, some fading, some clarifying, some revealing truths you had been avoiding. And this is not disruption, it is detox. This period is strengthening your ability to hold tension without immediately seeking release, to sit with uncertainty without rushing to resolve it. And this capacity will serve you well, because the next season will require composure, the kind that can stand in the middle of change without panic. You may also notice an increased sensitivity to what is authentic and what is not, because silence sharpens discernment. You begin to feel when words are unnecessary, when conversations are performative, when energy is misaligned. And this sensitivity is not meant to make you judgmental, but discerning. As the silence continues, you may find yourself drawn to fewer inputs, less media, fewer opinions, fewer voices, not because you are withdrawing from the world, but because you are recalibrating your focus, learning to prioritize what feeds your spirit over what entertains your mind. This is also a time when creative ideas may surface quietly, not loudly or dramatically, but gently, like impressions rather than announcements, because creativity often thrives in stillness. And silence gives those ideas room to breathe before they are exposed to scrutiny. You are also becoming more comfortable with not knowing how things will unfold, trusting that clarity will come when it is needed, not when it is demanded. And this trust is shifting how you relate to the future, replacing anxiety with expectancy. As the hours deepen, you might notice that people project more onto your silence. Assumptions, interpretations, narratives, but instead of correcting them, you are learning to let projection reveal more about the projector than about you. And this understanding is liberating because it frees you from the need to manage others' perceptions. This silence is also aligning you with humility that is confident, not self-effacing, but grounded. A humility that does not need to announce its worth because it is rooted in knowing who you are without requiring external affirmation. You may feel moments where you want to break. The silence just to reassure others, to smooth things over, to maintain harmony. But harmony that costs you your alignment is not harmony. It is appeasement. And this instruction is teaching you the difference. There is also a strengthening of boundaries happening, not through confrontation, but through consistency, because silence maintained over time communicates limits more clearly than words ever could, and these limits are healthy, necessary, and protective. As you continue, you may notice that your attention span increases, your ability to focus deepens, your thoughts become more organized, because constant speech fragments attention, while silence consolidates it. You are also learning to trust your presence, that you do not need to fill space with words to be relevant, that your energy alone carries meaning. And this trust changes how you enter rooms, how you sit in conversations, how you move through interactions. This quiet is also revealing where you once overextended yourself emotionally, giving explanations to people who were not invested, offering clarity to those who were not listening. And in recognizing this, you are reclaiming emotional resources that were previously drained. You may begin to feel a quiet confidence emerging, not the loud kind that seeks validation, but the steady kind that knows it, can wait, that knows it does not need to rush, that knows timing is working on TS behalf. As the silence stretches on, you may notice a shift in how you pray or reflect or think. Less frantic, less repetitive, more spacious, more trusting, because silence deepens connection in ways words cannot. This instruction is also refining your patience with yourself, allowing you to observe your own growth without harsh judgment, to notice progress without demanding perfection. And this self-compassion is essential for sustainable growth. You are learning that stillness is not stagnation, that quiet is not absence, that restraint is not weakness, but discipline. And discipline is what allows power to be wielded responsibly. There is a subtle rewiring happening where your nervous system begins to settle, where hypervigilance softens, where you no longer feel compelled to be on guard through speech. And this settling creates a sense of safety within yourself. As the hours continue, you may sense a growing alignment between your thoughts, your values, and your actions, because silence reduces contradiction. It gives you time to integrate rather than react. This period is also teaching you to honor your own rhythms, to respect when you need rest, when you need reflection, when you need space without apologizing or explaining. And this respect strengthens self-trust. You may find that when you do speak, even briefly, your words carry more intention, more clarity, more weight, because silence has refined them. And this refinement will remain long after the silence ends. This quiet is also preparing you to navigate future conversations differently, to speak less but say more, to listen more deeply, to respond rather than react. And this shift will change the quality of your relationships. As the silence deepens, you may feel a sense of inner order returning, like pieces that were scattered are finding their place, because noise often fragments identity while quiet allows integration. You are also learning that not everything that feels urgent is important, and not everything that is important will feel urgent. And this discernment will protect you from being pulled into distraction. This instruction is shaping your leadership, even if you do not see yourself as a leader, because leadership begins with self-mastery. And self-mastery is forged in moments like this, where restraint is chosen over impulse. You may notice that your reactions to criticism soften, that praise no longer swells your ego, that neutrality becomes easier, because silence is stabilizing your sense of self beyond external input. As you continue to hold this quiet, you may sense a readiness forming, not impatience, but preparedness, like standing at the edge of something with calm assurance, knowing you will move when it is time. This silence is also teaching you how to trust process over immediacy, growth over appearance, alignment over approval, and these lessons will guide you long after this moment passes. You are becoming comfortable with being unseen for a time. Understanding that invisibility can be a form of incubation, a necessary phase before emergence. And this comfort removes fear from waiting. As the hours extend, you may notice that the urge to speak gradually loses its intensity, replaced by a sense of choice, because practice becomes silence mastered, and mastery brings freedom. You are also learning to let things resolve themselves without your interference, to trust that not everything requires your input to reach a conclusion, and this trust lightens your emotional load. This quiet is aligning you with a deeper sense of purpose, not defined by constant activity, but by intentional movement. And this purpose feels steady, not frantic. As you remain here, you may feel gratitude emerging, not tied to outcomes, but to presence, to the simple fact of being grounded, aware, aligned. And this gratitude anchors you. You are discovering that silence is not the absence of power, but it's concentration, like water held behind a dam, building pressure, building potential, ready to move when the gates open. And as this stillness continues to hold you, shaping you, strengthening you, refining you, you may sense that something irreversible is forming, not outside of you, but within. A shift in how you carry yourself, how you engage, how you move forward, because you are no longer relying on words to define your path. You are allowing alignment to lead. And this alignment is steady, patient, and quietly powerful, continuing. And to deepen as you remain here, attentive, restrained, and fully present in this silence. That is doing more work than words ever could. And as this silence stretches even further, it begins to feel less like something you are doing and more like something you are inhabiting. A space rather than a rule, a posture rather than a restriction, because silence, once resisted, slowly becomes familiar, even comforting, like a room you did not know you needed until you finally sat down inside it and realized how much noise you had been carrying. You may notice that your sense of identity is shifting away from what you say and toward how you move, how you respond, how you hold yourself when nothing is being spoken, because identity rooted in words is fragile, but identity rooted in presence is stable. And stability is what allows you to remain grounded when circumstances fluctuate. This quiet is also recalibrating your sense of urgency around other people's reactions. You are learning that you do not need immediate feedback to validate your direction, that approval delayed is not denial, and that misunderstanding does not equal misalignment. And this understanding frees you from the emotional roller coaster of external response. As more time passes, you might notice that situations which once demanded your opinion now resolve themselves without your involvement. Conflicts soften without your mediation, assumption. Lose momentum without your correction. This is teaching you an important, our 10th lesson, that not everything requires your intervention to reach equilibrium. You are also becoming more attuned to your own inner signals, the subtle cues that tell you when something feels right or wrong, aligned or off, because silence amplifies intuition, and intuition is often drowned out by constant explanation. There's a growing sense of self-containment, forming the ability to hold your thoughts, emotions, and intentions without immediately dispersing them outward. And this containment is not repression. It is stewardship. It is learning how to carry weight without dropping it prematurely. This period is also reshaping how you experience connection. You may find that fewer words create deeper bonds, that presence speaks louder than conversation, that shared quiet can be more meaningful than constant dialogue, and this realization changes the texture of your relationships. You are learning that silence does not make you distant. It makes you deliberate. And deliberateness is often mistaken for mystery by those who are used to immediate access. But mystery is not manipulation. It is boundary, and boundary is healthy. As you continue in this stillness, you may feel old habits surface one last time. The urge to clarify, the reflex to explain, the impulse to narrate your intentions. But each time you resist, something strengthens inside you, like a muscle being trained through repetition. This silence is also revealing the difference between being heard and being understood. And you are beginning to accept that understanding cannot be forced. It can only be earned over time through consistency and integrity, and silence allows that consistency to develop uninterrupted. You may notice that your inner dialogue becomes kinder, less reactive, more observant, because when you are not constantly preparing what to say next, you have space to listen to yourself more honestly. This quiet is also aligning you with a slower, more intentional pace, where decisions are made with clarity rather than haste, where responses are chosen rather than triggered. And this pace will serve you well in moments of pressure. As the hours accumulate, you might feel a quiet separation from collective noise, trending opinions, emotional contagion. And this separation is not withdrawal, it is discernment, the ability to remain informed without being absorbed. You are also learning how to be comfortable with ambiguity, to sit in the unknown without anxiety, trusting that clarity will arrive when it is time. And this comfort with ambiguity is a sign of maturity. This silence is strengthening your emotional resilience, because when you are not constantly externalizing your feelings, you learn how to process them internally, how to let them pass without defining you, and this resilience builds stability. You may begin to notice that your confidence no longer spikes or dips based on conversation, compliments, or criticisms, because it is becoming anchored internally, and this anchor is difficult to disturb. This period is also teaching you to value depth over breadth, substance over visibility, meaning over momentum, and this shift will influence how you choose opportunities, relationships, and commitments going forward. You are discovering that silence allows truth to surface naturally, without force, without debate, without defense, because truth does not need constant reinforcement. It reveals itself through consistency. As you remain quiet, you may sense a strengthening alignment between your inner world and outer actions. Because silence reduces contradiction, it gives you time to integrate before you express. This quiet is also helping you release the need to control outcomes through conversation, to manage reactions through explanation, to soften consequences through justification. And in releasing control, you gain peace. You are learning that stillness can coexist with momentum, that progress does not always look like activity, and that growth often happens beneath the surface before it becomes visible. As more time passes, you might notice that the urge to fill space diminishes, replaced by a comfort with pauses, with gaps, with moments of nothingness. And this comfort is a form of freedom. This silence is also revealing which thoughts are truly yours and which were inherited, absorbed, or conditioned, because quiet creates space for discernment, and discernment clarifies identity. You are beginning to trust your ability to move forward without constant reassurance, without frequent check-ins, without external confirmation. And this trust builds independence. This period is shaping your emotional boundaries, teaching you when to engage and when to step back, when to speak and when to observe. And these boundaries protect your energy. You may notice that your tolerance for unnecessary conflict decreases, not because you are avoiding truth, but because you recognize the cost of engagement. And silence becomes a wise choice rather than a fearful one. This quiet is also aligning you with a deeper sense of self-respect, the kind that does not require explanation, that does not chase validation, that does not bargain for understanding. As the silence continues, you may feel a subtle but steady increase in clarity about what matters most to you, what deserves your attention, what does not. And this clarity simplifies decision making. You are also learning to let your actions carry meaning without verbal reinforcement, trusting that consistency over time will communicate more than words ever could. This silence is preparing you for conversations that truly matter, conversations that require presence, patience, and intention. Because when you do speak again, it will be from a place of alignment rather than reaction. You may sense a growing ease in your body, a relaxation of tension you did not realize you were holding, because constant speech often keeps the nerve wall system activated, and quiet allows it to settle. This period is also teaching you to honor your inner timing, to move when it feels aligned rather than pressured. And this honor strengthens self-trust. You are discovering that silence is not emptiness, it is fullness, without noise, potential without exposure, readiness without announcement. As you remain here, the stillness continues to shape you quietly, steadily, without drama, without spectacle, building something solid beneath the surface. Something that does not need to be explained to be real, something that does not need to be defended to be valid, something that will move forward in its own time with its own weight, as long as you stay aligned with this quiet, grounded presence that is becoming more natural with every passing moment and continuing to deepen layer by layer without needing words to sustain it. Chosen ones, this is where the silence earns its reward, not because you proved anything to anyone, but because you trusted God enough to step back and let Him step forward fully, without interference, without commentary, without fear. What you restrained is now refined. What you withheld is now weighted. And what you protected in quiet is ready to move with precision. You will not need to announce what happens next, because the shift will speak for itself, clearly, unmistakably, and without resistance. The same mouths that questioned will pause, the same eyes that overlooked will notice, and the same AEM sphere that once pressed against you will rearrange to accommodate what has been prepared. This is not the end of your voice. It is the elevation of it, because now when you speak, it will not come from urgency or defense, but from authority and alignment. Stay grounded, stay discerning, stay obedient to timing, because what emerges from silence carries a force that noise can never replicate. And you are stepping forward not as someone who needed to be heard, but as someone whose presence alone confirms that God has already moved.